Hey, this is Doug Sandler, producer of the Net Profit Podcast. We didn't want you to miss an exciting episode with Ryan, but Ryan is taking the week off. So here is a classic rewind of the Net Profit Podcast coming at you right now.
Welcome to the Net Profit Podcast with Ryan Kibler, your Net Profit CFO, helping business owners like you grow their net profit one episode at a time. And now your host, Ryan Kibler.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Net Profit Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Kibler, the Net Profit CFO. Today, I've got a very special guest, Josh Ramsey. I am very excited that he has taken the time and come on the show with us. Josh is the owner and operator of JRcmo, really a full stack marketing agency. And Josh has been in this industry for quite a while. And I know from our first conversation, I learned a ton in talking with him. So I'm very excited that he's taking the time and talking with us here today. So Josh, welcome to the show and thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Ryan. Excited to be here, man. We're going to dive into some good stuff.
Absolutely. Before we get to that real quick, I just want to give you an opportunity. Obviously I gave a short little background, right? You own, a marketing agency and work with businesses as their chief marketing officer. But I want to give you an opportunity, share a little bit more about your background and kind of how you got to where you are today so that we can understand a little bit more about your philosophy and, how we're going to learn today.
Yeah, so I appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to speak with everybody. So I'll keep it pretty short, but my history and narrative of where I've been to where I am now, I think is really important in people understanding what I teach and why I apply the methodology that I do. So back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I sold media. So I worked for large companies doing traditional media, television, radio, print, getting placements out there. Really, it was building brands. But early in that career, I didn't really know what I was doing other than I can put your name out there. I can put your ads out there. And it took me moving to the ad agency side to really grasp the difference in between strategic message, what you say, what you're trying to get across, and then the tactical placement. So as a salesman, I was doing tactical placement, getting the brand seen. But the strategic message, I never really understood to the depth that I do now. So then in 2009, I started my first company called Strategic Point Marketing. And then in 2018, I started a media company that's more digitally driven, but this was really before the AI boom. This was more software driven. That's called One Touch Media. And then I launched JRcmo in 2019, which is my fractional CMO. So one thing to understand for everybody is an ad agency is going to sell you what they're good at. They're going to sell you a set of service of whatever they list out. A fractional CMO is someone that has more knowledge than just digital. A true fractional CMO understands that it's not just digitally driven world, that it is a brand as a whole. Digital is a part of it, but so is all the other pieces and brands of direct mailing, television, radio, programmatic, traditional old school connections. There's just a lot that goes to it. And I think today the market is starting to get cluttered with ad agency executives that believe that they are a CMO, but they really only bring that one narrow niche to what they do. So that's the shortest version of what my background, my resume, and where I'm at now.
No, that's perfect. I love that. And, as we kind of dive into things here a little bit, I really like how you broke out the two pieces and, for business from the way that I understand it, and then I'm going to let you jump in. If you're a business owner and you're going to that ad agency, right? That ad agency, if they're not a true kind of fractional chief marketing officer, they're expecting you to have the strategy and the branding piece right already. They're really helping you kind of get your message out there on the proper mediums. But if you, like, to me, I feel like that's almost like skipping steps. But, I'll let you jump in. I mean, do you agree with that? Does that make sense?
It does. In the marketing structure that I have seen agencies use at the highest level, the biggest agencies, I believe it comes down to 8 pillars. And we probably don't have enough time for me to go through the 8 pillars of marketing right now today. but people can go look at it on my website, which, you'll post across the content and everything. But on my website, there's a platform called Agile. And the Agile are 8 pillars that essentially every large ad agency will work around, including brand style guide, core messaging, budgets, tactical placement. Those are just a few of the items that my Agile platform is created around. And we build that out for clients, depending on the client's need. But those 8 pillars are really what it comes down to, making sure that your marketing is set right, that you know what you're tracking, what's your ROI, how are you working with CRMs, all that information. And again, that's done brand style guide budgeting. You don't want to trust an ad agency to do your budget because they're going to come in and go spend more, spend more, spend more. They're trying to take that money and not necessarily be held accountable for it. Now, I'm not speaking ill of all ad agencies, okay? I work with a lot of ad agencies. A lot of them are good, but the expectations oftentimes don't match what the business owner wants, the realistic part of what the business owner should get, and what the ad agency sells, right? These become 3 different parts that you have to look at and understand what we want, the realistic of what we want, and then the ad agency's offering and expectation and how that's set. That all has to come together.
For sure. Yeah. And getting that, and a lot of that and getting that alignment is, do we have our brand right? Do we have our message right? And that's really the kind of the starting steps. Like, I would much rather have a business work with you and make sure that that's right. Because I think just going straight to an ad agency, it's kind of that old saying of throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks.
I mean, yeah, it's I would take it a little bit different, but I say one of my statements is ad agencies sell you what they're good at, not necessarily what you need. So when you walk into that agency, the traditional relationship is that a business owner walks into an agency and goes, "Hey, I need lead gen. Can you do it?" Well, what ad agency is going to say no? They're going to say yes. And they have a core belief of what they think is going to work. But I think there's a deeper level to that, right? And it's diversifying what you do, not putting all your eggs into one basket. A lot of times I talk about the buckets, and the buckets are advertising mediums. So the different locations of programmatic television and broadcasting versus AdWords versus SEO, just to simplify. And I talk about it in my conferences, and I say you fill each bucket about halfway full of water, money, however you want to call it. I call it water to make it simple. You come back in 30, 60, 90 days, and you look and see, did the level retain? Did it stay the same? Did it drop or did it go up? If it went up, now you look at law of diminishing return. Put in as much money as you can to get the maximum return. But law of diminishing return means that at some point you can't spend more money. Most people don't quite realize this, but yes, you can do a lot of SEO, but the law of diminishing return, simplified for this conversation, is that I work with, let's just using off the top of my head, a contractor that is in Miami. At a certain point, there's only so much SEO that they can really do and where they should spend that budget that they're tapped out. At some point, you shift and maybe you go from on page to off page. Then you could keep going. But even some of my national clients that I work with, we are shifting budget after 3 years of doing core SEO for on-page website development. Now we're wanting to shift over to building more backlinks. But this becomes a concept of what works. What do you do first? Then you have different, experts that are going to tell you something different, but that's SEO. So now you look at paid ads. If they're not working, do you modify the ads or do you cut budget? Well, there's a lot of questions that go into that of it didn't work. It doesn't mean it's not going to. It just means maybe you have to modify it to get that water to increase again. So again, that's kind of the concept. I call it test before you invest, meaning we can put money in before the ship is going to sink. So don't put too much in, but dip your toe in the water a little bit more, and see if those buckets will rise for you.
For sure. And everything that you're describing here, I mean, there's so much like testing and retesting and different options. And I think, a lot of business owners get stuck kind of hopping from person to person and then therefore switching strategies and not really, getting numbers around necessarily, did this really work for us or not? And that's all the more reason why I fully support what you do and hiring an expert and hiring a guy that can be there and really work with you long term and evaluate those kind of things and look at the entire picture, kind of take a 30,000-foot overview, if you will.
Yeah, there's a time to pivot and there's a time to change. And I think that isn't always recognized. When do we pivot strategies versus when do we change? And again, I've done this for 20 plus years just in the marketing world, ad agency world for, almost 18. Well, I guess 2004 and today is 2025. So, so there's a time to pivot and we go, hey, this just hasn't worked. We've modified it and it's not there versus a change, which means we move to a new agency. But in that change, you start over. And I don't
Yep.
think business owners understand that either. If you're moving from one marketing executive to another, business owners are not the majority. Okay. We're going to talk majorities here, but the majority are not geared to understand what has happened and why and how it's tracked and all that data to then move it over to the next agency so they can build on that. So a marketing executive knows how to structure you to be able to move to the next agency and not lose that momentum. But too often you lose that momentum. That becomes a problem because now you're starting back at square one and they go, oh, well, we're going to rebuild all of your ads. Well, we've already pivoted how many times? What are you wanting to do before you rebuild the ads? How much do you know? Now, I know that you don't want me to go into this plug, but I'm going to plug that real quick. This is why I do a 2-hour free consultation, because I want to understand the narrative of what's gone on, how you've structured it, what's worked, what hasn't worked. Then we look at what would be the next steps, what could be the next steps, and what would be the proper expectation of those next steps. So whether they work with me or not, at a minimum, they're able to walk away and go, okay, this is where we want to go, and here's why we want to go. It becomes logic rather than feeling. And I think we make decisions on feelings too often rather than the fact and the data that we should be making those decisions on.
For sure. Yes. And every time, like you mentioned, there's so much time lost, right? I think, evaluating how much money we're losing in time is very hard for business owners to do. But if you look at, lost sales, right? Lost opportunities, lost leads, right? I think business owners would really be shocked at, when you start over, how much that really costs you, not from the dollar side, but from the time side.
Yeah. There, I mean, you said it right. I mean, that's where I'm at with it. Can you afford to make that move? And sometimes you have to make that change. But knowing when you're going to pivot, why you're going to pivot, there's a lot to that. So yeah, I think you reiterated it right. That's correct.
And I think, like you mentioned, I mean, really having a plan for the transition, why you're doing it, and I love that your approach to that free 2-hour consultation, because you're really getting that 30,000-foot overview. You're working with the business owner so that you have a full picture of the puzzle. You can understand where they've been, and then you're also helping them build that plan for the future so you can help them transition out of that tough spot if they feel like they're in one and not getting the results that they want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that approach, and I greatly appreciate that. I mean, it's very, and that definitely for me shows, your dedication to your clients, to not only today, but, future clients that you are going to have, because, not there's not a lot of experts out there that are giving free 2-hour consultations, but like you have realized that's really what it takes, right? And for me, like when I take clients through the process, I have a financial assessment that I do for them that takes me a few hours to put together. But I've realized that's really what it takes in order for us to kind of be on the same page and really see, what's going on and where we're going moving forward to the future.
Yep.
So
That's it.
definitely,
I mean, yeah, I love that, Ryan, because I mean, you talk about being a CFO, we talk about books, we talk about numbers and money and revenue. Well, if you made mistakes with your budgets in the past, why would you not learn from those mistakes as you rebuild your budget? Like, I love kind of where you're going with that. And as I jump into that before we move to the next topic, Like if we're doing it with budget numbers, we're doing it with our family, our life, our kids, why are we not doing that in marketing? And it's not done. It's just, I look at this time and time again, all these different business owners, and it's not tracked properly. And I can go in and look just at their digital side, their digital presence, and I can see where they peak and where they drop. And I can ask them, what did you do? And in between looking at Google's algorithm changes and then looking at when they shifted to a new agency, we can see and start to connect the dots. And then you have to take that. And then if they have a good list of notes of what they've done, now you can build on that, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think for you and for me, it's really cool to go back and kind of put that puzzle together, right? And when you get done with it and you kind of see the end picture, right? I think you and I get enjoyment out of doing that and then being able to share that story with the business owners so that they understand it in the same way that I do, right? Because data and
I mean,
numbers, they tell us a story.
who doesn't love solving puzzles? At some level, when you solve a problem, a puzzle, an issue, a concern, you have success. And that success is the endorphins in your mind going off where you go, wow, I feel good, right? Like I completed something,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you go work out. I completed something. You look at that whole pizza. I completed something. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yeah. For sure. For sure. Yep. No, I completely agree with you. No, that's good stuff. And I would highly encourage my audience, rewind and listen to the last 3 or 4 minutes that Josh and I were just talking there and listen to that a second time. You need more data in your marketing, in your business. You need to look at it more. That's the that's the summary there of that last 3, 4, 5 minutes. Go back and listen to it again. Um, so I want to shift the conversation a little bit, and this really, comes from your experience, and the conversation that you and I had before we jumped into the show is, and this is what a lot of business owners I think miss, and a lot of even ad agencies I think miss is, you know, getting traffic and getting audience to a message is one thing, but then when they get there, like how are they receiving it? And how are they receiving your brand is a completely different question, completely different approach that you definitely dive into with the business owners that you are working with. Talk a little bit about that and why that's super important and why a lot of people miss it.
Yeah. So most people that are around my age or older, they know who Zig Ziglar is. And Zig Ziglar was the one that coined the phrase, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I feel like I've taken that to the next level. And I've been teaching this for many years, but it's not what you say, it's not how you say it, it's what's perceived by your audience. Now, when you take that concept and you try to justify it and agree or disagree with it, the perception is always there in between what you hear. But in today's world, it's a web based world. It's not audio anymore. I mean, it's still there, right? Here's podcast, but it's the perception. What do you take away from this podcast? When you look at a web and you do an inbound marketing, meaning I have a website, you do a search, you find me, that's inbound marketing. When that happens, what's perceived? Because I don't have a chance to verbally talk to them. Sure, I can put a video on my site, but they have to hit play. And if you make it to where it auto plays, a lot of studies show that that's a negative. People don't like it. They're sitting on their phone, not looking to make an audio connection. They're wanting to see what you have, see if it's what they want, and then dive in. So again, it's not what you say, not how you say it. It's what's perceived by your audience. Now, I'm going to use a quick example within that. I have been working with a guy that's in, we'll just call it, so he's not there, he's in the Tampa Bay area of Florida, and he's a remodeler. And in Tampa, a lot of times you get what are called snowbirds. So they live up north, they come down, they have a condo, they have a house in the high rise. It's really nice. And with that, they want to get a remodeling project done, maybe when they're in town or they're not in town. So here's what they do. They go online and they look at remodeling websites. This business owner wants that $1 million kitchen, the $500,000 bathroom. Like he wants this high-end stuff. But I had to, as nice as possible, help him understand that the pictures and the video and the imagery on his site does not speak to those people. It speaks to the lower level of affordability, not the high class. If you call me, expect to spend millions, right? He says, expect to spend a couple of thousand. So the visual has got to change. That means you have to not necessarily rebuild the entire site because you have structure of a code, then you have the imagery that people see. No one goes to a website and immediately sees code unless there's specialty of what you're doing. So the imagery of I'm looking for a $500,000 bathroom remodel, he wants me to call him. So if that's the case, I need to be able to look at it and go, man, I see granite, I see marble, I see the best of the best on your first images. And then I scroll down a little bit and there's more. And that builds the confirmation bias of I'm in the right place. But when you go to his site, it doesn't speak that. It speaks more to his narrative immediately rather than what his audience wants, which is they don't care about his narrative. In that remodeling world, the USP, the unique selling position, does not matter in the initial statement. The initial statement is a centerpiece that you land on and you go, wow, that's what his audience wants. So we don't worry about the USP in the beginning in that particular case. The USP for a fractional CMO or a CFO is going to be more of the expertise. What do you provide me as the business owner? I'm looking for this. What do you provide me? So this is where that perception has to come in, but that's based on how you structure your message. Sometimes your message is shared by a visual or text. So one quick example, one more, and then I'm going to kick it back to you, is if I use words versus pictures, you start to identify what your audience wants. So when I say killer whale, some of us have different pictures in our mind. When I say Shamu, for those of us that are probably around 30, 35 and older, everyone knows what Shamu the killer whale is, right? You think, what is it? SeaWorld, right? So you can get that picture and you understand what it is. But if I say famous, all of us have something different. If I say beautiful, all of us have something different. If I say Tom Brady, now all of a sudden you're thinking Tom Brady. Like most people in today's market know who Tom. If I say Messi, people know who the guy is, right?
Yep.
So when you put those two together, most people think Josh Ramsey, right? I mean,
Yeah.
come on, look at me, right? I
Yeah.
have no hair. It all like migrated south, But, for those of you that don't know me very well, I do like to have fun. I joke a lot. So that was a joke. But if you look at me one day, you'll be like, Tom Brady, Messi, I see it. You know what I mean? But anyways, I digress. But my point is still solid in the sense of, are we looking, is your audience, and when you want to engage with that audience, do they want to see the imagery to prove your point, or do they need the context of the words to prove your point? And these are two parts, and those then tie into your unique selling position, right? But you got to give the audience what they want, and that now is perception.
For sure. And they both have to be right. And the gentleman that you're working with that's redoing kitchens, the minute that his ideal client lands on his website, they're gone. They're not even there a minute. They're like, nope, not what I'm looking for, because the imagery was wrong. And that is like just so critical. And, you could run tens of thousands of the right people to his webpage, and it's not going to generate sales for him. It's just one of those steps, being off in the process that, someone, like you, that's a professional, that's an expert, that's the CMO, that's seeing that full picture, can come in and fix. And, that affects the entire process because they have
100%.
someone like you in their corner.
Yeah. I mean, you start to think about one of our first conversations on this podcast was, what's the difference in between an ad agency versus a fractional CMO? A lot of ad agencies are not going to help you with that level of messaging and that level of perception of your site, and then take it to the next level. What are we going to say? And now we don't have time to go through this, but now it's setting the KPIs. And the KPI, on the example that I just gave of the general remodeler, the KPI initially would be, how much time are they spending on your site? And what I can say is I track that and I set it. So if he ever leaves me, then I can say to him as he leaves, he can go to the next company and he can go, look, we took our bounce rate, our time on site from 21 seconds. Josh got it to a minute and a half, which is where we're at now. And he can interview someone and go, how do we get it to 5 minutes? Because my point to that would be this. Everyone that may be watching or listening to this, think about this real carefully for just 1 second. When you're looking to buy a service and you do a search and you land on a website, I'm going to make a statement that I believe to be true. I've seen it time and time again. The longer you stay on that website, the more likely you are to convert to a lead for that company. If you stay on a website for 20 seconds, the opportunity time of education and the information that that consumer is going to consume, because a consumer consumes, the information is a whole lot less than 20 seconds versus 5 minutes. So how do you control that user's navigation and keep them there longer? So I would just say right there as a mic drop that if you're talking to an ad agency and they don't bring that to you and talk with those terms, why are you working with them? Because anyone can build a website. Wix, Squarespace, Google, go build it yourself. But the
AI.
navigation, the consumption of information, all these other bullet points matter. And ultimately, what you want when you build a website is leads. You want someone to call you. So how do you do that? You have to know the logical order of what you execute. And one of those core foundational pieces is time on site. Engagement time, time on site, bounce rate, anything tied to that is going to be that KPI. You make a change, did it improve or hurt that? And these are the little pieces of KPIs that oftentimes ad agencies don't tell you up front because they're salespeople and they're just trying to get you to sign. Maybe they talk to you about it later on, but again, that deeper education is what I bring to the table when I'm educating people. And now I just gave your audience some key pieces that they can plug in immediately.
For sure, absolutely. Yes, and I highly recommend to my audience, I mean, if you don't have someone in your corner that's looking at these things, that's helping you through a lot of the challenges we've talked about here today, highly, highly, highly recommend reach out to Josh and his team. And, that kind of rolls right into, kind of the ending segment of the show, which is, Josh, any events you have coming up and best place for my audience to reach out to you, find you, book that 2-hour consultation that maybe they need, especially that business owner out there that's bounced around and been with 4 or 5 different agencies over the last 2 or 3 years. Where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah. So the first thing is start with what are you going to get, right? Before we even want to go talk to somebody, what are you going to get? So the get that business owners can get from me is 2 hours of my time consulting with you to understand your narrative, understand where you've been, why you've done it, what's worked, what hasn't, and then start to give you some free advice on here's the next steps that I would recommend. And here's why. Here's the logic and here are the KPIs. Let's look at what's been done and build on it, not go in and trash the last ad agency or the current ad agency. It's about how do we build on that? So that's the first part that I would share. How to reach me. My website will be listed in this podcast, but it's JR, it stands for Josh Ramsey, CMO, Chief Marketing Officer.com. So JRcmo.com. But here's what I always tell people. If you're going to talk to someone about web, you're going to talk to someone about online digital marketing, they should be able to show up for some really good keywords really high up. And I'm proud of the work that I've put in. And if you Google Fractional CMO Dallas, I'm number 1 and I think also number 2. So the 2 top spots, not even sponsored. So look below the paid and there I am. The other thing I'm proud of is I have about 32 different cities in the US where I am on page 1 for sure. And most of those, I'm in the top 5, if not number 1. So cities like Tampa, Houston, Austin, Boise, Denver, Los Angeles, these cities, you type in fractional CMO, even Cincinnati, you'll find me probably number one or for sure in the top 5 of any of those that I just mentioned. So you can also Google Josh Ramsey marketing and you can see all my media, all my content, all my book. I'm working on a next series of book. I'm going to drop a 3-volume series, hopefully in the next 6 months. We'll have number 1 coming out of the next 3. So we're looking at summer of 2025. And that series is going to be awesome. I'm so pumped to do it because the work that I've put in on it, the studying, the research, the application, the befores, the afters, the concepts, the laws of marketing, the laws of third, law of diminishing return, law of confirmation bias. All of these laws are going to be listed out. It's going to be like epic. It's going to be epic.
Love that. Yes, we will for sure get your website and everything down in the show notes. And again, highly, highly, highly recommend, if you don't have an expert in your corner in your marketing department to grow your business, highly recommend reach out to Josh and his team. And with that, everybody, tune in next time and go accelerate your profits. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Net Profit Podcast with Ryan Kimler. Make sure to subscribe or follow the show on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget to check the show notes for our guest contact information and to connect with Ryan on his website, netprofitcfo.com.